Congratulations. All right. Yeah. You guys ready? Main Street's up here. You guys ready? I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Greenwood Common Council on Monday, July the 1st. And if you would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing. After the pledge, we led in prayer by Marion Glover of Emmanuel Church of Greenwood. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lord, for this council meeting tonight, and we pray for wisdom on behalf of the council, and we pray that you'll continue to build this great city. We thank you for Greenwood. We thank you for all the wonderful projects that have been here. It's looking really, really good, and I thank you for that. So bless this time together, and may your will be done in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Roll call.
Armstrong.
Here.
Bates.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Dine.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Gibson. Here. Hill.
Here.
Hopper.
Here.
And Lexi.
Here.
We have a quorum. Each of you should have received copies of our minutes from our regular meeting of June 17th. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Bates, second. Second by Mr. Alexi. Any discussion, additions, deletions, or corrections? Seeing none, roll call on the minutes.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson. Aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
And Lexi.
Aye.
Minutes are approved to a vote of 9-0. This time, we've set aside the opportunity for members of the audience to address the council concerning matters that are on the agenda. If you would like to do so, I'm assuming many of you here are for the same topic tonight. If that's the case, there is a 5-minute time limit per individual and a 20-minute time limit per topic. So if you're going to speak, please take that into consideration. And if you wish to speak, as Mr. Gooden has, step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, council members, neighbors. I'm here to stand with many of my
Excuse me,
neighbors.
I'm sorry, your name and address.
Oh,
for the
sorry.
record.
I just made an assumption. Randy Gooden, 1157 Central Park Boulevard South, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. I'm here tonight on behalf of ordinance, can you read, 19-18, and staying with many of my neighbors, asking the council reject this ordinance where you're trying to remove it from the protection of the overlay district. We would like to see it remain in overlay, and instead of giving you my arguments, which you've heard many times before, I'm going to invite many of my neighbors to come and stand before you and give you their reasons for this. So, gentlemen, if you would.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, citizens of Greenwood.
Name and address, please.
My name is Sanjeevan Ball, and I'm at 2946 Holiday Way, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. And I'm here in behalf of, to address ordinance number 19-18 and why it should be rejected. So the biggest issue that I have is with the speculative warehousing that's going on in Greenwood. We've had a bunch of warehouses built north of Main Street on Arlington Avenue. I don't know if anybody's done the research on it, and believe me, I just did half an hour worth of research on it. Just Google, and I just went around the warehouses. So notably, we have Worth, which has moved from northern Indianapolis. I don't know how many jobs it's actually brought to Indianapolis, to Greenwood, but it just migrated from Indianapolis down south to Greenwood. Then right behind the fire station is Spreetail, which is VM Innovations. Similar deal, moved from Plainfield, Indiana, down south to Greenwood. They've already exhausted, they were given by Hendricks County, they were given a $400,000 tax break over a period of 5 years, depending on job creation. And that was in 2016, and we're in 2019 now. And similarly, rubber product distributors moved to moved from 2725 Toby Drive to Indianapolis, Indiana, from 1741 Keaton Way in Greenwood, Indiana as well. And similarly, Pitney Bowes, which we tout as an achievement, actually shuttered a facility, which is a logistics facility up north in Fishers, Indiana, and that's kind of taken those people. That warehouse has been closed in Fishers, Indiana, and they've consolidated operations in Greenwood, Indiana. Starting wages over at Pitney Bowes at $12 an hour, and that approximately ends up being what, $24,000 a year, and we've given them a tax break of, I believe, up to $3.3 million. And I don't have the exact details, but that's quick Googling. And so my question is, I mean, is our tax breaks what's making it incentivized for warehouses to move down over here? Are we seeing any solid warehousing actually that's people that actually want to start a new business in Greenwood, Indiana? What's the reason? Just because we gave out tax breaks to building of those warehouses, has that made warehousing cheap in Greenwood, Indiana? And people just plan on moving over here, come 10 years down the lane, hey, they might move to Franklin, Indiana, it's way cheaper, right? So that's something I like the city council to take into consideration when we go about doing a rezone, when we go about getting rid of the overlay district, the restrictions on that piece of property. So warehousing is speculative. We should make better use of our resources and better use of our location, which is right on I-65. So council members, please do consider that when you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, and I'll bring up some of the others that would like to speak. And the things that have been mentioned to you before regarding this area is if this moves into an industrial development, there are concerns with this being right across the street from a residential development. Concerns with noise, lighting, traffic, being able to get to Temple. Those have all been expressed before you. The way it sits right now, there is not a concern with it being developed commercial or residential. But if we do develop an industrial, with everything else that's going in and out there, we know that that will highly increase traffic, increase risk, and unfortunately, I think it will negatively impact quality of life for all of my neighbors that live out in that district. Is there anyone else that wants to speak against this, please?
Good evening, all council members and the neighbors. My name is Navraj Sandhu. I live on 2979 Holiday Way, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. In the last hearing, there were some arguments raised that told that there were some arguments that were stating that there's already a polytainer warehouse that is built right next to the houses. So what it is just like, that was already a mistake that has been made by the builder. That warehouse was already built before they actually built the neighborhood there. So what it is, it's just all those people that are living right next to the polytainer warehouse, which is 60 feet away from their houses, they are not happy. There's not even a single homeowner that is living there. They have noise pollution, the warehouse is too close to them, they don't have privacy, they have nothing like that. The reason they're living there is just their work is closer, they can't afford that house. So that's the main reason they're living there. Other than that, they're not happy with what's already has been done, which was a mistake by the builder. My second point is, are there any other people other than the person who's selling the land or the builders that want to build there that actually want this rezoning to be industrial? I have more than 200 people that have signed on the petition that are against it, that live in the University F Park neighborhood. The third point I want to make is the council has already done a good job for setting an example of a Vineyard Church property right off the exit 97, where they did not let that zoning to be industrial, and that's where the actual Greenwood life comes in, where the council members chose the quality of living over bringing industries to Greenwood. The fourth point I want to make is, if they ever build a warehouse there, they are planning on building an entrance right next to the neighborhood's end, right in front of the neighborhood's entrance. It's gonna make everything congested at the entrance. There are kids coming in and out. There's kids playing right next to the entrance, which will make unsafe situations. And the last point I just want to make, just put the situation in a personal perspective. Where ask yourself personally that would you want to live in a house which is right next to a warehouse? Would you want to go through that excessive traffic every day when you're going through your everyday life, when you're going to work? Would you want to put your kids in a situation where so many semis are crossing the road, there's a truck route that goes to your kid's school? So I just request that council members to take these things in consideration and vote against the zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I invite any others up, just so the council members see, for those of you that are opposed to this being put through and rezoned to industrial, would you please stand so they can see that you're opposed to this? These are my neighbors, and I stand with them. I'm gonna ask if there's anyone else that would like to speak in opposition to this, if you would go ahead and come now and start closing on our time.
Good evening. My name's Kathy McKee. My address is 808 Griffith Road, where I've lived for the last 24 years. We've seen a lot of changes over the years, but none so destructive as what has happened on the east side of Greenwood, or the Warehouse Trail, as I like to call it. This council needs to understand that we live there. I would bet that you didn't know that you can hear the trucks at the existing warehouses well into the night and early morning, beating and banging at all hours, and of course, the tires blowing on occasion. In addition, on a cold winter night and well into the morning, you get the diesel fumes from the trucks running all night. Our surrounding roads are taking a beating. Griffith Road has had more semis try to make the turn onto Main Street, and the intersection has been shut numerous times. I'm certain the county and the Greenwood police would confirm this. The roads are simply not made for this kind of traffic, including the construction traffic when they are erecting one of these beauties. I hate to say it, but early morning traffic on the east side of the interstate strongly resembles Harding Street in the 465 area. Is that what this was intended for? I'd like a show of hands, please. How many of you live in close proximity to the area that would be considered for industrial zoning, and of course the inevitable warehouse? We've already been there, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Now, how many of you would have purchased your home here if you knew that the city of Greenwood was going to industrialize the east side of Greenwood? Can you raise your hands? How many would buy here? Thank you. My last question is addressed to the council. I doubt if I get a show of hands, but how many of you would consider purchasing a home in this area? Please consider the consequences of your action. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Harden, 736 Fireside Drive, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. I come tonight to not keep repeating what everybody said, but to bring some other concerns that I've seen with the projects going on. So when the Amazon warehouse was proposed and they expanded Graham Road to go around and wrap into Collins Road, they made a truck route out of it. We're not enforcing that truck route as these trucks are trying to make a turn onto Collins Road to Allen Road and getting stuck in the ditch. The road's not wide enough. They repaved Collins Road, and now ultimately we've spent all this money to improve a road that needs to be widened and tripled in size. So where's all this tax money coming from to repair roads that we're just gonna rebuild here in another, next year? I work for a trucking company and Amazon's one of our biggest customers. Hundreds and hundreds of loads a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We got trucks coming in and out. A lot of my neighbors are here. I've watched them use the path that we built, the complete path from our neighborhood to their temple. And if we have to widen Allen Road, that's just more wasted money. We built this path that is no longer useful because we're going to widen the roads. We have no way for them to cross the street to avoid these trucks to go to the temple to worship. We don't want stoplights. We just don't want all the traffic. So now we got older individuals that, may not walk as well. And how are you going to stop an 80,000-pound rig going 45 miles an hour when they're trying to get across the street to go worship? It's just not planned out right. My son plays T-ball at the Little League. If he has a 6 o'clock game, I sit through 6 stoplight cycles at 65 and Main Street to get through the stoplight. It takes me 40 minutes to get to the stoplight. I have to leave my house at 20 after 5 to make a 6 o'clock game because of all the traffic. And that road is torn to crap too. We had the interstate rebuilt how long ago? And instead of widening Main Street going under the interstate, we have 2 lanes.
Right.
And there's no way to widen it without tearing up 65 again to widen the underpass. So like I said, I mean, if you're gonna industrialize, we did a piss poor job of planning for it. Because this area can't handle the traffic, the roads can't handle the traffic, and just the capital expenditures alone that Amazon I'm sure is not paying for, it's not ready for it, and it's a bad idea. Thank you.
Good evening, panel. I appreciate you listening to me and listening to everybody else. I live at 3207 Billingsley Road, which is at the corner of Griffith and Billingsley, which is about 3/4 of a mile north of the proposed site for this warehouse. It seems to me,
Your name, please?
everybody else here,
Your name, please?
I'm sorry, my name is Dennis O'Donnell.
Thank you.
It seems to me like Greenwood's the warehouse capital of the world. They're popping up everywhere. And I go by them and they seem empty. And we're gonna have more and more and more. I'm blessed to have 7 grandchildren. We built a custom home. It's an expensive home, right there at the corner of Billingsley and Griffith. All 7 of my grandkids run around the yard playing kickball, baseball, whatever. They're not gonna be able to do that anymore because of all the trucks going by. They're gonna be nose to tail to take that new entrance to the shortcut to I-74. Who's not thinking here? This is absurd. It's hard to believe what's going on. Who's not thinking? The mayor? Who's doing the planning here? It's hard to believe. I've brought this sign now for the 3rd time. 2 times it's worked because you voted down warehouses close by to the north. And I'm sorry, to the south. I implore you, I beg you, vote this down. It's not right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me and everyone else.
Thank you.
Just one final comment, council members. You've heard some of my neighbors and you've heard me make the arguments for these type of things in the past. I just hope that you would take it into consideration because we're not impacting a company so much as we're impacting our neighbors and our future generations. Please keep that in mind when you consider this tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue. If you have a presentation, I prefer you wait until it comes up on the agenda, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I'll do
Thank you.
Is Billingsley Road another name for 300E?
What's the county road name for your road, sir?
Is it 300
Google Maps calls it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir?
Good evening. My name is David Staggers. I live at 2963 Arside Drive, 46143. And I'm standing here, just as the rest of the people here, to urge the council to vote no on ordinance 19-18. 3 comments I'd like to make about this. First comment I'd like to make is concerning the quality of life in the area as is and will be impacted by a decision to zone this as warehousing. I've lived in this neighborhood for 9 years. I've already seen the impact from this. I'm a cyclist, I'm a runner, and not just in the neighborhood, I'm running on roads all around there. And I've felt the impact of that as far as my own safety is concerned, particularly as a runner on some of those roads because of the increase in traffic in that particular area. And I'm certain that others, particularly the walkers and such, are feeling that same impact. Secondly, I fail to understand the logic of the rezoning. particularly when you're thinking in terms of butting up a warehouse district up against a residential district. The logic of it doesn't make any sense, and has already been mentioned. We have several warehouses in the area already, some unoccupied. I know for a fact there's a warehouse down in Franklin at the exit 90, a million square foot warehouse that is unoccupied at the moment. And yet we're thinking in terms of putting zoning for more warehousing. It doesn't make any sense at all. So, another thing that I want to make in regards to that is the perception that is being created that we live on the other side of the tracks, with the I-65 being the line of
That's right.
demarcation. To the west of 65, where I assume most of you live, certainly Mr. Armstrong, you live west of 65, is an area that is residential, but if we go east of 65, where really one of the largest subdivisions in Greenwood is located with several hundred houses and more being built, we are put in a position here where actually we're going to be not surrounded, but certainly on two sides going to have warehouses. And so really the perception in my mind, and certainly in other people's mind, is that we live on the other side of the tracks. When I moved to Greenwood, and I'm certain that several of you felt the same way, Greenwood I would characterize as being a neighborhood or a bedroom community, not an industrial community. And so I would like for Greenwood to maintain that kind of reputation. I'm not quite sure the logic of why we need to commercialize, industrialize, warehouse-wise Greenwood, other than for some sort of financial advantage, which I'm not sure it really is much of a financial advantage. My last point, and I'd like to address this to Mr. Armstrong, since you're the representative in our particular area, is that, as I mentioned before, you are living in a comfortable area that is surrounded by houses. You live in a suburban area. We thought we lived in a comfortable surrounding as far as being a suburban area, but we're seeing it being encroached by warehouses. So
Yeah,
please.
Let me interrupt you there for just a second. Do you happen to know who is the only member of the council that voted against Amazon?
That was you, sir. Thank you.
That was you?
Yes.
Great. And I'm urging you
Yeah.
and everyone else to feel the same way.
And I think I also voted against Pitney Bowes.
And I do appreciate that, sir.
Yeah.
So
I
I will
understand.
expand. Thank you, sir.
And I will continue to vote against warehouses because Greenwood, 16 years ago when I took this seat, I walked around and said Greenwood deserves more than warehouses and starter homes. And I still believe that. And if it weren't for a small portion of the community that had an issue with me, that I would continue to be running under that same platform. And so now that I am a lame duck, I will continue to vote against warehouses that are not appropriate for this location.
Mr. Armstrong, I salute you for that. And I direct this to the rest of your colleagues here in terms of considering where you live and think about what would it be like to have warehouses begin to encroach your particular area. So again, I strongly urge the council to vote against this ordinance for the reasons outlined, not only by myself, but also for my fellow neighbors. Thank you very much.
Just so you'll know, I announced early that there was a 20-minute time limit, and you've got just a little over a minute.
I'll be quick. All right. Okay, my name's John Pendleton. Live on 628 Fireside, Greenwood, 461466313. So anyway, just another thing I wanted to mention. If you just pull up to the intersection of Graham and Main Street, there's empty lots on all four corners. Why does something have to come back here in the back right next to our neighborhood? Plus you have empty lots going up Graham Road between Main Street and County Line. And, you know, that's already prepared for this kind of, that road's already prepared for that kind of traffic, where Allen and Collin Roads are not. And it would just make more sense if you're gonna do this kind of thing, to put it right there at the intersection, close to the interstate, or up there where that's already zoned and prepared for those kinds of buildings, instead of being pushed, south of our community. It's just the light pollution, the noise pollution that's gonna take place, it's just gonna be, and sooner or later, I-69 is gonna get finished, and they're gonna wanna build, warehouses over there. And so we'd like for you to think about that too, so, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. All right, time is up. You wish to address another topic other than this one?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Council. My name is Matthew Smith, 450 Southgate Drive, Greenwood, Indiana. I've got some questions about Ordinance 19-16, which now seem a little less pressing than what's been going on tonight, but still, I believe, should be answered. So the ordinance is consolidating several different sections around, in section 4-16 of the Greenwood Municipal Code, peddlers, solicitors, street vendors, transient merchants, and mobile food truck vendors, and consolidating them into one fee schedule per 180 days with a $25 renewal. The questions I've got about this is, if you look in 4-16, there are currently for peddlers, solicitors, street vendors, and transient merchants the ability for people to pay per day and per week. And then that in this ordinance is stricken away only to be per 6 months. And it's not even per 6 months, it's per 180 days, which I don't mean to be nitpicky, but leaves 5 days out of the year. This language is inconsistent with what's been put into our municipal code so far. The only item on section 4-16 that has a renewal at all is industrial discharge permit. And that industrial discharge permit, the fee is $25, the renewal fee is $100, which is clearly meant to be a discouragement to renew. No other fee has a renewal fee like this. And so I'm just wondering, for our vendors that come for, say, the Freedom Fest, thank you. We've taken away the ability for them to just pay per day or per week, and we're charging them per 6 months to be able to come to something that may be just 1 or 2 days a year that they come and do business in Greenwood, which I don't think is very fair. And like I said, this language is inconsistent with what is already in our municipal code. And it may seem a little less important than getting a warehouse built beside your house, but I believe it's keeping continuity in our municipal code is very important. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time? Seeing and moving on, reports, Corporation Counsel.
Should have received the IDEM semi-monthly and the litigation report on the SharePoint, and if you have questions about either of those, please contact me.
Anything from the Controller's Office? I think he's here. Any committee or board reports? It has not been an IBC meeting since our last meetings. See none? Moving on, ordinances and resolutions. Notice of intent to consider ordinance 19-18.
An ordinance to amend the official zoning map adopted by reference in zoning ordinance number 82-1 as amended, proposed rezoning and removal of approximately 98.866 acres from the South I-65 Worsville Road Overlay Zone District located at the southeast corner of Allen and Collins Roads, sponsored by Dime.
You want to say something? You're right ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Dine, second. Second by Mr. Hill. Now, Johnson?
Good evening, Daniel Johnson, city engineer. Our senior planner was not here, was out today. So before you, this ordinance, 1918, is for a zone map amendment. As this can just read off for you. The Planning Commission did hear this request at its May 13th meeting. They are forwarding this to you with a favorable recommendation for this removal of this property from the South I-65 Horseshoe Road Overlay District, and for the rezone from agricultural use to industrial light use. That favorable recommendation came with a vote of 5-2, subject to the commitments that are stated in the ordinance, which I believe all of you should have. And a representative from the petitioners here with a presentation.
All right, thank you.
I do have a question on the commitments. Is now the right time, or should we wait until the presentation?
Will you cover those in your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Then
Okay.
let him make his presentation.
Thank you very much. Members of the council, Mr. President, good evening. My name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian, and thank you for hearing our brief presentation on this case, proposed ordinance 19-18. Here with me this evening is Dave Duncan, John Taylor, the owner of the property, Courtney Lehman, and Mr. Avatar Singh, and Don Barron. The engineer very adequately set forth what we appreciate the council considering, that is a vote to approve a rezoning to I-1 of this 98-acre site. The site is pictured here in this photograph. It's in the corner of Allens and Collins Road at the southeast corner, and it is directly adjacent to the Pitney Bowes industrial facility. So this site would be developed very similar to the Pitney Bowes site. It is directly west of the new Amazon site, which is pictured on this. So it's directly east of the Amazon site. The site is separated from our neighbors to the north by a considerable distance. There was some commentary about how there are existing warehouses next to homes, and that is true. The university development, the residential development, was developed after there was already considerable industrial development in this area. And those homes are about 60 feet away from the industrial development that's been long existed there. We are acutely aware of our neighbors, of our residential neighbors. And in order to try to mitigate the effect of this development, we entered into 5 pages of commitments. And those commitments then were again modified at the Planning Commission meeting. Those commitments address things like building materials, limiting outside storage, how we will shield trash enclosures, how we'll keep our lighting so it's not an adverse effect, how our signage will be low key. And then the 3 most important ones, I believe, that were entered into at the Planning Commission is that this development would be separated from those homes by first a 100-foot right-of-way of Allen Road, and then another 120-foot buffer area with a berm in that buffer area that'll be 8 feet tall. So it'll be a couple feet taller than I am. And then another 40-foot berm, 40-foot wide berm along the east side. And we've made a commitment to address future improvements to Allen Road. So we are very aware that we are near a residential area. But as the members of the council can see, there's industrial development very close to that neighborhood right now. Ours is going to be about 4 times as far away than the existing industrial development. And you can see what a berm can do. This is just west of this site. A berm landscaped and with trees on it, you can mitigate and shield our development. You can see how this area developed. This is a 2003 photograph, aerial photograph, and some people made comments about that industrial has been coming. That is true, members of the council. There was only about 4 buildings in 2003. If we fast forward to 2011, there was about 11 buildings, and then the Amazon site and our site. My point about that is, and the planning staff here in Greenwood acknowledged this in their report. My point is, this site is likely never going to be developed for residential homes or even a multifamily homes, which leads to another issue, a very understandable issue, and that is the concern about traffic. Members of the council, if you had 100 acres and you put 3 homes per acre, I'm just picking that, as an average, that would be 300 homes. with 2 cars each. If you had 100 acres, which this site is, and you build apartments on it with say use a low number, 8 homes, 8 apartment homes a acre, that'd be 800 apartments. Both of those proposed uses, either multifamily or single family, would generate much more automobile traffic than what an industrial use would generate. And one of the other commitments we made to address our neighbors' concerns was that we would not bring truck traffic down that entrance right across from University Park. That's in our commitments. So this is a photograph, a rendering of how it would develop, and the purpose of that is to show the members of the council the distance from our residential neighbors to the north and where our development will be, and show that there's only one entrance on Allen Road, and we've made a commitment that that entrance will not be used for truck traffic. This will result in a significant increase to the tax base of Greenwood. It pays about $6,000 a year in taxes now. When it's fully developed, we estimate that we'll pay about $1.5 million. And members of the council, that will not have any impact on the school system. There won't be, it's not like a residential neighborhood where you would generate a lot of students and children. That will not happen from this development. The staff report said that this may be the most desirable use, given that it's unlikely the multifamily would be improved and the single family development is not optimal. We believe our commitments will help preserve the property values and the fact that we are further away from our residential neighbors than existing industrial development. As you can see from your own zoning maps here, the purple is the industrial development, and this is not I-2. I-2 is that darker purple up on that screen. This is a I-1, which is a lighter industrial development, and hence more appropriate next door to the residential neighborhood. We have a gentleman here, I believe tonight, Mr. Singh, who supports this zoning. He owns the property immediately to the east and adjacent to this property. We believe this meets the Wurstville economic development area goals of creating jobs, tax base, and we've outlined our commitments, including the 3 that we added to the commitment base at the Plan Commission hearing. The Plan Commission did recommend approval of this, which we appreciated. We believe our zoning is compatible with the zoning on the northwest and the west and south sides of the site. We believe that it's a less intense zoning than an I-2 zoning. And as to the comments that there are empty warehouses, none of the warehouses that this client has developed are vacant. In fact, I'm advised that there's no warehouse space over 250,000 square feet available in this area. So we would not build this if we felt it would not lease up very promptly. It will result in a significant increase in tax base. We've limited the access points off of Allen Road, and we've agreed to a substantial landscaping buffer separating us from our residential neighbors, a much greater buffer than what they currently have on their west side, and we've agreed to a number of architectural design and operational commitments, which we think makes this a compatible use for the residential neighborhood. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, on point 2.1, all building loading docks, all loading berth dock space facing I-65 and Wurstville Road shall be screened using a combination of landscape berms and plantings. Now, the ones facing Wurstville Road are basically the ones facing the Pitney Bowes, and I'm sorry, but I don't really care what it looks like on that side. I care what it looks like on the north side, not the south side. So what's going on with that?
Well, on the north side, Mr. Armstrong will have that 120-foot wide buffer with an 8-foot tall berm in it. So we feel that's going to be, and we'll landscape that berm, which landscape will be subject to your staff's approval. We think that will be a tremendous screening feature, and it's I think it's 3 times in excess of what your ordinance demands. I think your ordinance requires a 40-foot berm, 40-foot wide landscaping area, ours is 120 feet. So we feel like we've gone to some lengths to shield that north-side view.
I wasn't able to be at the plan commission meeting, but obviously there's only 7 members there. Usually there's more than that to represent the city. But 2 members did not agree, with the recommendation. Would you have any way of knowing why they did not agree?
Sorry, Mr. Bates, I do not.
I think there's one here, Mr. Smith, as a member. Would you be willing to tell us council why, in your opinion, this was not favorable from a plan commission meeting point of view?
Certainly. So I can't speak for any other members of the planning commission. I can only speak for myself. But the reason that I voted no was based on our statutory criteria. When I looked at the land use, the question, I believe, was statutory criteria number 3. The question was, is there any practical difficulty for them to use the land as it's currently zoned? And for me, I looked at that question and they said, well, a apartment complex is not likely to be put in there. That to me was a political question and not a question of practicality. That question was, the answer that the developer gave to us, they said, well, this is, the council hasn't approved a new R3 or R4 development in years. And when I looked at that criteria, and I said, hey, that's a question of politics and not of practicality, and so that's why I personally voted no.
Is there also a breach of the comprehensive plan in making this decision or not? Anybody can answer that?
It is.
I don't think that's what the comprehensive plan originally called for. Was it
I believe,
suburban fringe?
if I recall correctly, I may not be, I believe the comprehensive plan does call for this to be like industrial.
It's agricultural, suburban fringe.
Suburban fringe.
Agricultural suburban fringe forever. We had
I'm mistaken.
for it.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Smith.
President, would you allow him to speak?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Are there any other questions on the council?
Mr. Tui, is there any design that you can make that would keep loading docks from being on the north end of the building towards Allen Road, that they would be inside towards Pitney Bowes?
I may let the petitioner's representative answer that question.
So the question is related toward whether docks facing north is something that you can completely get rid of.
You can get rid of this.
Yeah. One of the things, so the 120-foot buffer, the requirement for the city is 40 feet. When we took a look at this property, we wanted to, as Mr. Tui said, consider our neighbors to the north. And so we created more berming, 120-foot setback, no trucks on that road, because I don't have the final, I could have a build-a-suit, I could have different types of things, which, the Amazon was not a speculative warehouse. It was a build-a-suit, which, has a lot of personal property inside and good opportunities. So not knowing whether, I don't have a tenant in hand today. But what we do is we soften the impact that if that is a potential later, we've given the berm, the setback, and everything more than what the city's required. We triple it. So.
All right, any other questions on the council?
I'd like to comment on Mr. Hopper's comment. Is it possible if we tabled this that you could look at that and see if it's feasible to have the docks on the opposite side?
I'm just thinking that from a noise standpoint, I get the 8-foot berm, but I feel like with the building in the way of the docks and loading, that there's more of a noise barrier than just some landscaping?
No, it certainly would be the first option is to not have it. We do noise studies, we do traffic studies, all of those to make sure that the pre and post development meets all the codes. And docks facing that direction may need some type of a sound barrier to make sure that the noise levels are pre and post. So we will definitely work with planning and staff. I just, without knowing if I get a three-sided guy, which direction, but I can say that noise impacts, traffic impacts, we can agree to doing all those studies to make sure that we're in compliance. We put up noise barriers and screen walls, physical screen walls, not just berms, sometimes to block those.
So what would you?
Because I don't have a tenant, I mean, 2 weeks from now or a month from now,
Okay, but this wall that you're talking about
Right.
that could possibly be put up, could you give us some insight as to how that would appear or where it would be?
you know, a lot of times, sometimes you have the residential stone walls that are precast, they could be 10, 12 feet high, and so we see these long, not necessarily just the interstate, but sometimes you see those architectural walls that have flowing things. There's all types of materials that can be used, put landscaping in front of them. And not usually wooden fences, those don't actually hold the sound in, but there's all types of materials that we could use and work with staff if we needed to on that north side.
I just think the north side's even more important than the west side, because you're gonna have Amazon there, you got.
Yeah, the north side would be the side of concern.
Yeah.
I would like more information on that wall, or have some specifics on that.
So the screening requirement of the north, more information about that, if there were docks.
Are we bound by the plan commission recommendation if we don't act on this in a certain time?
If we don't act on it within a certain amount of time, it reverts to the plan commission recommendation, is that correct?
Yes, if you fail to act on it within 90 days from the date of certification, it is considered zoned as recommended.
However, it's 90 days from when it was certified, and I don't believe it was certified until the end of May, which would give us till the end of August, I guess. So we have a couple more meetings that we could push this out to.
I have a question, sir. Is there anything you guys can do to mitigate light pollution? Because I imagine a warehouse like that is getting put off a lot of light. And if you're trying to sleep at night, it's getting shining people. There's really no way to
You know, we spend a lot of time with light, and light is perceived differently. The best way I talk about light is to say that there's a football game on at the high school, and I'm 5 miles away, I can see the light. It's not necessarily shining on my yard. We have boxed, downcast light fixtures, then we do light lumen studies that the light won't spill over. It doesn't mean that if I'm standing and looking at something like the mall may have lights on, it's not necessarily spilling onto my property. So with the shining of lights, we do not let lights go, you know, in this direction. They're downcast and they spill directly on the pavement. But it's a very good question. I mean, it's something that we study with our tenants.
So is that like a deflector then that would be on there?
Yeah, you can put shields on them as well. So the boxes
And are these scheduled to have the shields?
to make sure that the light doesn't pollute to the north, yeah, or off your property, yes.
Okay, but
Downcast.
according to
That's it.
2.8 and under B is where I'm looking. So are the lights that are proposed, do they have
The shoebox term is industrial, the industry-wide term for downcasting, which do not allow the gooseneck is a bad one.
so they would not need any type of an
We
additional deflector?
We have added shields, if we would want shields on the ones that are the closest to the north, on the north side, we could add shields. You may have more light fixtures because the light kind of gets blocked, but we could add shields. The box fixture itself is meant to design to come down straight on the pavement.
Mr. Dunn?
In the ordinance, it addresses the loading docks. It said all buildings, loading berths, docks, bays facing I-65 Burrsville should be screened by using a combination of landscape, berms, and planting. I don't know what more the people in the area want or what the council wants, but it does address that, and there's 4 paragraphs addressing the lighting with pole lights, wall-mounted lights, all other light fixtures, the restrictions that they're planning on them, the fact that there'll be cutoff fixtures, vehicular canopy lights and everything, so it all is all addressed in the ordinance, but I don't know that it's as strict as some of them
Yeah,
were asking
it doesn't
for.
prohibit
We don't
docks
want
from
the
being on the
warehouse
north
wall.
end of the.
That's right.
That's right.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Hopper.
I don't think the ordinance prohibits docks from being on the north side of the building.
It doesn't say, this says facing I-65 in Mooresville.
Yeah, which means it's possible there would be docks on the north side, because it's not brick.
And that's why I asked about the Worthville, because that's the south side, which nobody is objecting to, because the south side, any unsightliness for that would be seen from the Pitney Bowes, not from the neighborhood.
Well, I was just reading what was in here so
Yeah.
everybody would be on the same page.
I think the Worsville could be a typo, because on that picture, I don't know if you had a berm on the south side, but you did have one on the north side and the west side.
The I-65 and Warsaw roads were things that we work with city staff on making commitments to the park.
And that's standard language in what the city staff requests.
That's right.
It's not specific to this location.
Exactly, so.
But it does, even though the north side is not covered in that, they have agreed to put up actually a much larger, if you've been by there, the berm that separates the road from Amazon is only a 6-foot berm. And they have agreed to put up an 8-foot berm with landscaping.
Well, I would like to see us, think about tabling this for 2 weeks and give them an opportunity to see what they can do with having the placement of the loading docks. And I would also like for us to, add to the commitments to have the shields. I know of 3 different locations where there are warehouses, and I don't understand why we don't require that up front when that planning's going on, but we don't. Something I've been pushing for 2 or 3 years, but so far I haven't been heard. But I can tell you that the lighting needs to have deflectors on it.
If the council so chooses to postpone this to our next meeting, that is fine, but based on what he said a few minutes ago, I'm not sure we'll have any other information 2 weeks from now than what we have tonight, because they probably won't know who the tenant is going to be at that time. So, at this point, I don't know that postponement would actually provide us with more information, but that's up to the council. They've agreed to commit to doing the shields on the lights, and so if the council wants to amend the ordinance to include that, we can do that tonight.
I will make that motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Hopper to amend ordinance 1918 to include shields on the lights. I have a second by Ms. Gibson. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, then roll call on the amendment to ordinance 1918.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Dine,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gibson,
Aye.
Hill, Hopper.
Aye.
And Lexi.
Alright,
Ordinance 1918 is amended, voted 9-0. Any further discussion on ordinance 1918 as amended?
I feel like we're being asked to make a zoning change, and I haven't heard a compelling reason for us to grant that request.
Yeah.
So it's a speculative warehouse, we don't know what kind of quality of jobs are going in there. I voted for the Amazon project because A, it was Amazon, and B, Indianapolis was still in the running for the Amazon HQ2. I didn't want to be the guy who tipped off Amazon. So if there are extra reasons, I do consider zoning requests are more likely to go along with those, but in this case, I'm not seeing any compelling reason for us to change the zoning on this almost 100-acre piece of ground. Once we change it and they build a warehouse, that's it forever. And I've been around this council long enough to hear stories or hear complaints about oh, I wish Bob's whatever wasn't built downtown, it's such an eyesore, it's in our way, can't we get rid of it? And when we sit up here and we make zoning changes, we have to think, what will people say about this in 30 years when it's an old warehouse? So I'm going to oppose this request.
Any other discussion or comments from the council?
I know you say that probably in 2 weeks they won't know, but I would like to know if they feel like that they can change where those docks are.
All right,
And I know that they're saying, you know, somebody may come in there that wants 3 sides and all, but and I understand that those houses have been built and they have been sold after the warehouses were there. I understand all of that. But I'm just trying to make the best of both worlds.
All right, any other discussion? Motions or?
I guess I'd add that the comprehensive plan should be respected. People build and they don't have absolute certainty about the future of the real estate next to them, but the comprehensive plan is supposed to provide some sense of certainty about what the ground across the street might be used for. And in this case, it's suburban fringe, not industrial.
Mr. President, perhaps to address Ms. Gibson's concerns, we would respectfully suggest an amendment that if we had docks on the north side of that building, we would agree to build an 8-foot tall sound wall adjacent to
I'm sorry, please be quiet.
Trucks are 14.
Quiet, please.
8-foot tall sound wall adjacent to our landscaping berm, so that would mitigate the sound. We would be willing to do that if that would assist the council.
All right.
So if there were loading docks on the north side, then we would install that wall at the same time we were installing our landscape.
All right.
Totally irrelevant.
Would someone like to make that a motion to amend ordinance 1918?
I'm sorry, Mr. Tui, could you repeat that, where the wall would be on the, behind the berm,
Yes, ma'am.
and it would be 8 foot tall?
Yes, ma'am. So what I was thinking is that right on the south side, this side, yes, Mr. Armstrong's pointing out, right at the south side of that 140-foot wide landscape area, if we put docks, if our user wanted docks on the north side, at the same time we were building that, we put up an 8-foot tall sound wall, so the wall would be separated from our neighbors by that landscaped area. So you'd have the road, then you'd have this 120-foot wide area, 120-foot wide area, an 8-foot mound, and then a wall behind it. That would.
How much good will that 8-foot wall do when it's that, when it's that distance from the building?
I don't know the answer to that. I just know that Community Plainfield, Indiana, used one of those, put one of those in, asked the developer to put one in at a UPS warehouse, and I believe it was very well received. And it was some distance, 100 feet kind of distance plus from the warehouse doors. And it was a similar wall to what you'd see along the interstate to almost, I think they call it a noise attenuation wall is the form. So with that berm and that wall, I think that would knock down the noise considerably.
Right.
Last question while you're there. I thought I heard during your presentation you would say no trucks would be coming in and out at the entrance to Homecoming, right?
That's true.
So what is that entrance for right there? At break.
Passenger vehicles.
Okay, so the trucks will go out.
Come down on Collins Road and south end of the site. And we added that at the plan commission, we added that commitment.
Would there be upgrades to Collins Road to make it a 4-lane wide road?
I don't know about that. I know there are upgrades that we have agreed to on Collins Road. I don't know the extent of those, but it's ongoing with the planning department, and that there's a commission that addresses that also that we made in the planning commission.
All right.
Could we ask Daniel, where is the traffic signal that's going in Collins Road, where is it going?
at
Can you
Worsville.
tell us anything, at Worsville, that's right.
Right.
But, and can you tell us anything about what will happen with Collins Road?
So that traffic light would be roughly right here,
Yeah, the Collins and Worsville.
because Worthsville is down here.
Sure, so we have been working with, the petitioner for improvements on Collins Road, between Allen Road and Graham Road, which is off the screen here. It will be, widened to, 12-foot lanes and 4-foot paved shoulders.
How many lanes?
2 lanes.
Two? All the semis?
All right, any other questions from the council? Someone want to make the amendment about the sound wall?
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Hopper to amend ordinance 1918 that if there are docks on the north side of any of the buildings, that they would erect a sound wall, 8-foot sound wall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Foster.
Could
Any-
we, take that sound wall up to 10 feet?
Yeah, 8 feet just doesn't seem easy.
20, because the trucks are 14 feet tall.
Yeah, we would be agreeable to 10 feet, and what I would add to, and I'm okay with, is a sound study, that if it needed to be higher, that we would make it, to meet all the noise ordinance of your city.
All right.
So I would do a minimum of 10 feet and taller if the sound study required, or required sound study.
Okay.
I amend my motion.
All right, motion is as just stated, I won't repeat it. And you agree to second? Second that. All right, any further discussion on the amendment to ordinance 1918? Seeing none, then roll call on the amendment to ordinance 1918.
Bates,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Dine,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gibson,
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
And Armstrong.
Aye.
Ordinance 1918 is amended again on a vote of 9-0. Any further discussion on the council concerning ordinance 1918 as amended? See none, roll call, ordinance 1918.
Campbell,
Aye.
Dine,
Aye.
Foster,
Nay.
Gibson,
Aye.
Hill,
Nay.
Hopper,
Aye.
Lexi,
Nay.
Armstrong,
Nay.
and Bates.
Nay.
Ordinance 1918 fails to pass on a vote of 4. If you wish to leave, feel free to do so, but we do have other business to carry on, so if you would do that quietly and have your conversations out in the foyer, we would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your all's input this evening. First reading, Resolution 1911.
A resolution declaring a certain area within the city of Greenwood an economic revitalization area and qualifying certain real property improvements for tax abatement and setting the time and place for a public hearing at Elm Industrial South Tech Business Park District 4 and 5, sponsored by Opera.
Before we do that, let me get Steve on the stand here. So
Make all those amendments.
I make that motion. Anybody would like to second it? Move forward.
We have a motion to move CF1 County Line Partners to
We didn't have to wait.
the agenda, to the current place on the agenda by Mr. Hopper. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Gibson. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Mr. Huddleston.
I think he stepped out. There he is.
Okay, he's not here. No.
Let him know.
Yeah. Steve, you're up.
Mr. Huddleston, you're up. Not the first one.
That puts some spring in his walk.
See, Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Here today with regards to the approval of the tax statements with regards to county line properties. We have prepared a compliance statement, filed it. We did have a conference call last Tuesday with the auditor, city council, controller, as we worked out those differences. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Huddleston? Last time, we postponed this because there was some questions about this with the county and different things, and to my understanding, that has all been settled with the county and everybody, so we're ready to deal this night if you so choose. So, do I have a motion to find these in compliance? Motion by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Bates, to find them in compliance. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? County Line Partners, yes.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
This is 16-07 and 16-14.
Yeah,
Actually,
16
I think those are actually, it's county line properties, and I think it's actually 1614 and 1616 are the actual declaratory and confirmatory, but yes, it's for the, it's not for, it shouldn't be for Indiana, it is for Indiana American Office Park, Section 2, Block B.
Okay.
But I do believe I actually pulled them because I wasn't sure those numbers were right. The declaratory resolution is
16-14.
Is 1614, and the confirmatory resolution is 1616.
okay.
So make sure that you put that in there, and make sure the record is clear. It's 1614
14 and 1616. All right.
And this is the one that says that they will have 17 current and retained employees, and they have 5 current and 2 additional.
Yeah, in year one, yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, back to our agenda.
Finish this one, or something, have one more.
No, we're gonna go. Resolution 1911.
I read it.
Yes, you read it perfectly.
Do I have
Only interrupted her 3 or 4 times.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hopper, second. Second by Mr. Dine.
Gave a presentation on our.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Sherman? See none. Roll call, resolution 1911, first reading.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson. Aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
And Bates. Bates.
Aye.
And Campbell.
Aye. Resolution 1911 passes first reading 9-0. Second reading, ordinance 1916.
An ordinance amending Chapter 4, Article 1, Section 416, chart on fees, permits, and licenses of the Greenwood Municipal Code 1993 as amended to update fees for peddlers, solicitors, street vendors, and transient merchants, and add fees for mobile food truck vendors.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Gibson, a second. Second by Mr. Lexi. Any discussion, ordinance 1916?
Yeah, when we were talking about this at the last meeting, you said that this would have no effect on the vendors at either the Freedom Fest or the Farmers Market. That
Because
this
they
is
don't get those permits.
right.
Yeah.
That these are totally
Different, there's a different set of agreements for those types of activities that they do through.
yeah, and that this was a way to clean up the code to make it to where the fees that were lost during a recent upgrade or a recent change to the code would be put back into the code.
Well, what it does is you adopted ordinance 1719, which reorganized how peddlers, solicitors, and added food truck vendors to those types of activities that are regulated. And in that those actual regulations, 1719, it had the fees set forth. So when the fees are put in and you're adopting regulations, there's also a fee chart that's in the code that should officially be amended to add those fees that you've just adopted to the chart, and that was not done. So it just takes the fees that were put in by ordinance 1719 and puts them in the fee chart. What they're doing is they're eliminating and deleting the old fees. It used to be the fees, and you're correcting them and updating by putting the fees that are now set by ordinance 1719. You really kind of have to do them in two different places.
Right,
I just wanted that on the record because of the comments that were made by Mr. Smith.
Sure.
Any further discussion on the council? Seeing none, roll call, ordinance 1916, second reading.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
And Dine.
Aye.
Ordinance 1916 passes second reading 9-0. Resolution 1910.
A resolution declaring certain area within the city of Greenwood an economic revitalization area and qualifying certain real property improvements for tax abatement and setting the time and place for a public hearing. SWSRK Holdings, 173 East Broadway, sponsored by Hopper.
Have a motion?
Second.
I
I thought you said you
I
had
have a motion by Mr. Dine, I have a second.
I'll take the second
by
or first
by
one.
Mr.
I'll take
Hopper.
two, I'll take one.
A motion by Mr. Dine, second by Mr. Hopper, is scheduled for a public hearing. If you're,
It's July 15th.
oh, July 15th, I'm sorry, it's not scheduled for a public hearing. Not tonight anyway. Any discussion? As mentioned before, Mr. Bertner is here if you have any questions, but Mr. Bates and I are personal friends with Mr. Bertner, so we will recuse ourselves from the vote. But any discussion on the council? Seeing none, roll call, resolution 1910, second reading.
Why are we having a second reading if it's scheduled for a public hearing?
The public hearing is a confirmatory.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So we make sure we don't change our mind.
Yeah. No, on these, we get to vote 3 times.
Gibson.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
And Foster.
Aye.
We abstain, says. Passes 7-0, 2 abstentions. All right, new business, introduction of new ordinances and resolutions. There are none, so miscellaneous business from the council.
I just have something that I'd like to mention. At our next meeting, we're going to have an ordinance that is going to realign information on our massage parlors. And when we did this initially, I think it was back in 93 or 96, we had some issues and we were trying to get information in there that would help the police to get that situation under control. But there's been some changes, and so we have 2 ladies that, one of them had been here in the city with a viable massage service, and the person that was in business with her moved, so she had to find different rent, and she moved into Marion County. Now her and another lady are moving back to Greenwood, and right now they're not operating within the law, but the law is way out of place in what they have. So I would ask that you consider thinking about suspending the rules and passing this through first and second reading at our next meeting when it's introduced.
That'll be at our next meeting, right? Okay. All right, anything else from the council?
Kudos to city staff on the Freedom Fest. A excellent speech by the deputy mayor. If I must say myself, it was amazing.
I was gonna say that too.
All right, anything else? It was nice, good job. I didn't hear the speech, but the festival was nice. It was too hot though, can you order cooler weather?
But it didn't rain.
But it didn't rain, that's what I kept hearing all day.
Nice to talk.
All right, anything else for the council? All right, this is the second opportunity for members of the audience to address the council concerning business that in this case is not on the agenda. If you wish to do so, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. See none, other miscellaneous business, corporation council,
have another CF1 for compliance, Becknell Industrial, South Tech Arc Building 1, it's for real estate improvements, resolution 1718, 1725.
A motion to find them in compliance by Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Dine. Wow. Okay, good.
I got 3 of those.
Good. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? They are found in compliance. Unanimous vote. Anything from the controller who's not here? Anything from the mayor's office? We are adjourned.